There's something that's like already.
So
All right, you're muted. It's ready.
Oh, we are, okay, oh, I forgot y'all moved. We ready? We can start? Good morning, everyone. The quarterly meeting of the Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council will come to order. I appreciate everyone coming today, especially with this weather that we're having, off and on crazy weather. Ms. Ebony Haven, could you please call roll for attendance?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ms. Dooley here.
I'm here.
Dr. Vera Vecchio,
Here.
Ms. Bayham,
Here.
Mr. Billings,
Present.
Ms. Crane,
Here.
Mr. Ennis,
Present.
Ms. Hagan.
Here.
Ms. Hano. So,
Here.
Ms. Harmon,
Here.
Ms. Heimel, Ms. Jordan,
Present.
Ms. Nguyen,
Present.
Mr. Piante, Ms. Richard, Mr. Rocca,
Here.
Ms. Stewart, Mr. Taylor,
Here.
Ms. Washington,
Here.
Ms. Webb,
Here.
Dr. Wilson,
Here.
Nobody.
Ms. Womack,
Present.
and Ms. Gonzalez.
Here.
We have a quorum. I'm gonna read.
Okay. Thank you, Ebony. At this time, we will have Ebony read the mission statement and the ground rules and virtual protocol.
So the mission statement for the Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council is to increase independence, self-determination, productivity, integration, and inclusion for Louisianians with developmental disabilities by engaging in advocacy, capacity building, and systems change. The Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council's ground rules are: members must be recognized by the chair before speaking, be respectful of each other's opinions, break for 10 minutes every 1.5 hours, discuss council business in a responsible manner, except as necessary, restrict the use of electronic communication, i.e. texting, during council and committee meetings, silence or turn off all cell phones, be on time for meetings, no alphabets, and side conversations are kept to a minimum, done quietly and restricted to the subject at hand. And Christy, I gave you a copy of the, yes, right there,
That's for the
for the protocol.
Yes, thank you, Ebony. I will now read the virtual protocol. Before we get started, I just want to remind you of a few rules for committee members and members of the public attending in person. Please raise your hand to speak and wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking. To help the meeting run smoothly, please keep side conversations to a minimum and comments related to the topic we are discussing. For those committee members who are attending virtually, remember you must be on camera and have your first and last name showing to be counted toward our quorum. Please keep microphones muted unless called upon by the chair. Electronically raise your hand to request to speak and wait to be called on by the chair. For attendees, electronically raise your hand to request to speak. Once recognized by the chair, your microphone will be turned on. After speaking, the microphone will be muted. Also, the Q&A is to only be used by those needing an ADA accommodation to participate in the meeting. Public comment will not be accepted via the Q&A except for those individuals who requested the accommodation. As per order, committee members in person and virtually will be allowed to speak first. Public members in person will then be called on, followed by public participating virtually who have their hands raised. Comments in the Q&A and chat will be addressed last. As with all hybrid meetings, it can be difficult to keep track of all of those wanting to speak in person and virtually. Please be patient. All comments and questions from committee members and the public may be limited to 3 minutes or less, should we run into time constraints. So please keep that in mind. Also, comments about a person's character will not be allowed. Finally, members of the public will have the opportunity to provide public comment before each vote and during designated public comment periods. The chair may also use their discretion to determine if comments will be accepted outside of those times. Thank you. The next item up for business is the meeting summary. A draft of the April 18th meeting summary was distributed. The summary will not be read unless requested by a member. Everybody happy? Are there any corrections need to be made? If there is no objection, the meeting summary is approved and distributed. Hearing none, the meeting summary is approved. The next item of business is the chair's report. Good morning, everybody. The executive committee met yesterday and has 3 recommendations to present to the council. The committee discussed the 5-year state plan development process for our next 5-year plan, 27 to 31, which will include an 18-month research and planning process. Based on guidance from the Informational and Technical Assistance Center for Councils on Developmental Disabilities, ITAC, staff created a very detailed schedule which includes the following: drafting and approving an updated mission statement and position papers, as well as creating new position papers if the council feels the need. The standing committees offering concepts to be considered for inclusion in the new 5-year plan. Establishing and appointing a 5-year planning committee. Hosting at least 2 public forums and collecting data from a public survey. Collaborating with the DD network, as well as developing the goals, objectives, implementation strategies, and draft the 5-year plan. Public comment period, and lastly, final approval by the council. Therefore, the committee has this recommendation to offer for the council's consideration. Ebony?
If the draft of the 5-year planning, is included in your packet. It is on the left side of your packet. It's called FY 27 through 31, 5-year state plan development process. And, the executive committee reviewed guys have a copy of it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it should be
It's
it's on the
behind
left side.
It's behind the status report. Mine was getting stuck together. I think that's all. Right. Down right there.
Yes.
And it was sent in the email that I sent on July 3rd. The process was sent in that email as well. So if you all, the executive committee, I don't know if Christy wants to, this is the recommendation that they have for the state plan development process. They recommend that you approve.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to take it from here, Christy.
We need the motion to approve it. So then
You all, the motion came from the committee. Yeah.
Okay, we just need to approve it.
I have a question.
Go ahead, John.
It's just this is the same plan, it's just a new cover. Correct?
I'm coming along.
So this is the state plan for the 5-year plan, not the action plan for FY 26.
I got it, yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah, I know.
Okay.
The process,
yeah.
For,
Yeah,
How
we
we're
talked
gonna
about it.
figure
We
it
talked
out.
about it
Yes.
yesterday.
yeah.
Process, plan process.
Yeah.
Yeah, the state plan development process.
And then the plan that's in there,
Yeah.
that I was like, wait, this is being, but it's not.
No, it's not.
It's just a new cover.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
that's my question.
okay.
Yes, so the council is about to embark on a very long research and planning process. Christy kind of highlighted what you all will be doing, updating the mission statement and the position papers. We'll host public forums. I'm really excited because the DD network is starting to collaborate again. So I'm really looking forward to the collaboration that we'll have in those public forums. We're going to be sending out public input surveys to develop the concepts that you guys will use to develop your goals and objectives for your next 5-year plan. So this is the detailed process that the staff and I have come up with for you guys throughout. I mean, it goes from today, where you guys will approve the development process, all the way to January 2026, where you guys will actually ratify the 5-year plan and approve the position papers. So it goes all the way through January 2026, so that we can have the submission to HCL on time.
Approve it. You have an approval from Nicole, motion to approve it from Nicole.
So Nicole, the motion came from a committee. It came from the executive committee yesterday, so.
Okay, so I,
It doesn't.
okay. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Comes from the committee.
Oh, okay. All right. So it is moved to approve the drafted 5-year plan development process. Because the motion is coming from the committee, it does not require a second. Are there any other discussion from council members? Any public comment? All right.
Jill has her hand raised.
Jill? Thank you.
Christie, how many months did you say this plan will take to develop? Like 18, 15? You said a number.
So I can answer, Christy. ITech recommends 12 to 18 months that council start to do the research and development of their state plan. Jill, we extended the time to the 18 months because we
Okay.
wanted to make sure we had enough time.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you.
Dr. Phil?
Just had a question. When this plan is adopted, approved, whatever, will the council have the opportunity to create or assign, ad hoc groups to, well, this looks like a very ambitious plan and it's a lot. I worry about kind of missing timelines if you don't have, some of these things might really get bogged down. So I don't know, once it's adopted, can that be, if it turns out to be necessary?
Yeah, so I mean, in here, feel like where it says when, those dates are just projections and we're hoping to get things done by then, but things could happen. We don't know what the next session holds. I don't know if we'll be able, it is Stephanie and I's goal to have more than 2 public forums. They only held 2, one in Shreveport and one in Baton Rouge during the last 5-year development planning process. It's our goal to hold more than that. But again, we don't know what the session is gonna hold next year, what the council's advocacy agenda items are gonna be. So these are all subject to change, which is why that star is there. But yes, just to answer your question, we are planning to establish the ad hoc committee in April 2025. And then they are going to meet for multiple times. They're gonna meet multiple times. If you look at number 12, the development of goals, objectives, implementation strategies, and completion of the draft 5-year plan, Stephanie and I have already sort of estimated that planning ad hoc committee will at least have to meet, how many?
At least twice.
Yes,
At
and
least-
full day meetings.
Yes, like either 2 days in a row or broken up if we need a break, but
Yes.
the least is probably gonna be 2 times. And the reason that we picked August is because they're not gonna be established until April. And then we have to put things out for public comment a little bit, but then also do our own research. So we wanted to make sure that the staff had the research available for the ad hoc committee. So we say August, but it could be the end of July to August, as long as it's pretty much done before that October, that next quarterly meeting. That's why there's nothing from August to October, just in case we need that little bit of wiggle room.
Jill has the hand raised.
Oh, Jill? Jill, go on.
When is this 5-year plan gonna, I'm thinking really ahead, when is this due to the feds?
It's,
Oh, right. Stephanie?
so it's due, so like we're gonna, or y'all, the council will approve it in January. Just kind of like as a general rule, this is my first 5-year plan that I've done, but I've done the annual updates. And for example, I've already updated our annual plan for next year, for 2026, as a mock one. Just kind of estimating what it is that we're gonna do. So that has already been done. So I would assume that after it is ratified by the council in January, it would be sent off to the feds, ACL, all that for approval before this meeting at that time, if that makes sense. I don't know if it's a little bit of a longer period. Like I said, this would be my first 5-year plan that I am putting into that federal database thing. So I don't know if they need more time to look over that, since it is a larger plan than just our annual work plan. So I'm not sure when that will open, Jill, but I hope that kind of answered your question.
Thumbs up. Lauren?
I guess my question or statement is to Phil and Tori. Is there a way that the committees can maybe get y'all's 5-year plans? We can maybe, I know y'all are busy, but that way we could compare them, go through maybe highlights and things in similar that we have, so we can help each other.
So that's a great question.
And you brought that, which is, that's great.
Yeah, Lauren, we can answer, Phil. So
Yeah.
if you look at number 11, network collaboration meeting. It is, I know, well, the DD network, we have decided to meet quarterly. We had that in July, but again, the date could change. But we do plan to meet with DRLA and the Human Development Center to see where we can collaborate, where they're going to work. Maybe we don't need to do that same work, so there's not duplication. So we're reaching as many families and individuals with developmental disabilities as possible. So there is a plan for us to have a collaboration meeting with the DD network.
But just for us to have if that's public knowledge, to have a copy of the plan.
Can I respond?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yes, we'll share anything. It is a public document, but it's not, it won't be a apples to apples at all. And DRLA's plan is actually very different.
Yeah,
It's not even a 5-year one, it's a different time frame, right?
Yeah.
2 years or one?
I've looked actually to see what we have.
Yeah, 9 years is coming up very soon, right?
So what we do, we actually put out annually, we put out goals and priorities for public comment. So we don't necessarily do a 5-year plan. I think I recall the time I've been here having a 5-year planning process that was done with all the management team. Our board might work on that, but what we do is every year we are required to put out goals and priorities for public comments annually. So we do that on an annual basis. So, and those are all public. I can, they're out for maybe a comment right now, actually. Every year we actually get public input on them.
Stephanie?
Oh, I was just also gonna say that, this development process right here is more for, the council. We have 2 other processes that we're also following that is more for us, like staff, of how we are going to go about things. So this isn't like a completely fully detailed of exactly what we're doing, because I mean, yes, it says like, oh, we're gonna research this, you know, that kind of thing, but I didn't include things that really, it was more of on our end, just because I didn't want this big, long document. I didn't, but I just know that this is the overall outcomes of those months, and really the things that the council will either need to be voting on, need their input, and just kind of know that, or know something that we've done, that report is coming to them. Does that make sense? So there is a little bit more to what the planning is, just kind of on our side, that's not in this also.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, Mr. Eric?
So basically, I was saying the plan is approved. Y'all just bringing it to the board.
The executive committee approved it yesterday, and yes, they are recommending that the full council approve it.
Sorry, can I say something?
Yes, Jill.
For clarity, Mr. Taylor, all we approved is the timeline of when we were gonna get everything done.
So you saying for clarity that all y'all doing is this, saying that this is the time that basically we're gonna get everything done and get the ball rolling on
It's
that.
like a draft,
Correct.
like a
Just a
a draft process. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Anyone else? Any more public comment? All right, you ready for the question? The question is on, the approval of the drafted five-year plan development process. We will have a roll call vote. If you are in favor of the motion to accept the drafted five-year plan development process, when asked your name, say yes. If you are opposed, say no. If you abstain, say abstain. Ebony, please call the roll.
Mr. Dooley? Yes. Mr. Dooley, yes. Ms. Banks?
Yes.
Ms. Banks, yes. Dr. Barravecchio?
Yes.
Dr. Barravecchio, yes. Ms. Bayham?
Yes.
Ms. Bayham, yes. Mr. Billings?
Yes.
Mr. Billings, yes. Ms. Crane?
Yes.
Ms. Crane, yes. Mr. Ennis?
Yes.
Mr. Ennis, yes. Ms. Hagan?
Yes.
Ms. Hagan, yes. Ms. Hano?
Yes.
Ms. Hano, yes. Ms. Harmon?
Yes.
Ms. Harmon, yes. Ms. Hymo? Ms. Jordan?
Yes.
Ms. Jordan, yes. Ms. Nguyen?
Yes.
Ms. Nguyen, yes. Mr. Piontek? Ms. Richard? Mr. Rocca?
Yes.
Mr. Rocca, yes. Ms. Stewart? Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor, yes. Ms. Washington?
Yes.
Ms. Washington, yes. Ms. Webb?
Yes.
Ms. Webb, yes. Dr. Wilson?
Yes.
Dr. Wilson, yes. Ms. Womack?
Yes.
Ms. Womack, yes. 18 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, the yeses have it and the motion is adopted.
I think we just made history, y'all.
The committee also discussed the submitted proposals for activity 2.1.3 and 3.1.5 in the new fiscal year 2025 action plan. The council only received one proposal for activity 2.1.3, training for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities on how to navigate the developmental disability behavioral health and Medicaid managed care organization system. The proposal was well-written, and therefore the committee has this recommendation to offer for the council's consideration. Ebony?
That's the motion.
Right. So it is moved to accept the approval of the ARC Louisiana's proposal for activity 2.1.3. And because it is coming from a committee, it does not require a second. Are there any discussions from council members? Any public comment? Oh, I'm sorry.
What you and I had talked about making sure that when we negotiate in the contract, that we have primary access to, put it on our website first.
Yeah, I think we had talked to Ebony.
Yeah, so that'll be in the negotiating
Yeah.
process when we do the contracts. Lauren, and we'll make sure that we make it known that the council wants those materials to be there. But the art, and Kelly's here with the art,
Right.
he submitted the proposal. They have always been very forthcoming and open to giving us documents and making sure that we have them.
Right, that we have access, but I just want to make sure that if we are paying for it, so in fact, it is our, it should be primarily on our website and maybe a link to the art. That's just my.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, anytime you buy something, anytime you have a contract with someone, it belongs to you guys, it actually doesn't belong to us. We can use the material because we developed it, but it belongs to the deed council. But just to be clear, are you saying that you don't want to have, you just want a link to go to the ARC? You don't want us to have an actual page like we do for our SDM?
I mean, that would be something that the contract, the executive council, but.
Like for us to access the toolkit on our site and your site, is that?
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you
As long
guys,
as
we
we have it
actually
on
don't,
ours as well.
yeah, we actually don't put any materials on our website until the contract's over. But you have access to it first because monthly you're getting all of these documents. You have all the PowerPoints, you have all of the fact sheets, everything. So you guys have access to it first, and then not until the last month of the contract do we actually put it on our website. Honestly, it's because if they have the PowerPoint stuff, they may not want to come to the training, they could just,
Yeah.
so, anyway.
Right. Thank you so much. Ms. Field?
I mean, I just will say it's a little complicated for us because actually the university would require that if our faculty or staff made something that actually belongs to the university, even unless the contract explicitly states that, we always would put it on, either link it to the other place or put it in ours and, either way. But if we can make sure that that wording gets decided
Right.
within the contract. But I will say that from the university's point of view, they will, not necessarily HTC, but the university would prefer that it go on our website and be linked to your website, you and all the materials per se, but as long as we have.
Yeah.
So if we have to come up with some legalese way of saying it, I think that's something we can, do in the contract negotiation part.
Okay. Any other questions? No public comment? All right. Everyone's ready for the question? So the question is on accepting the approval for the ARC of Louisiana's proposal for activity 2.1.3. Right. We will have a roll call vote. If you are in favor of the motion to accept this proposal, when your name is called, say yes. If you are opposed, say no. If you abstain, say abstain. Ms. Ebony?
Ms. Aduli?
Yes.
Ms. Aduli, yes. Ms. Banks?
Yes.
Ms. Banks, yes. Dr. Barravecchio?
Yes.
Dr. Barravecchio, yes. Ms. Bayham?
Yes.
Ms. Bayham, yes. Mr. Billings?
Yes.
Mr. Billings, yes. Ms. Crane?
Yes.
Ms. Crane, yes. Mr. Ennis?
Yes.
Mr. Ennis, yes. Ms. Hagan?
Yes.
Ms. Hagan, yes. Ms. Hano?
Yes.
Ms. Hano, yes. Ms. Harmon?
Yes.
Ms. Harmon, yes. Ms. Heimel? Ms. Jordan?
Yes.
Ms. Jordan, yes. Ms. Nguyen?
Yes.
Ms. Nguyen, yes. Mr. Piontek? Ms. Richard? Mr. Rocca?
Yes.
Mr. Rocca, yes. Ms. Stewart? Mr. Taylor? Mr. Taylor, yes. Ms. Washington?
Yes.
Ms. Washington, yes. Ms. Webb?
Yes.
Ms. Webb, yes. Dr. Wilson?
Yes.
Dr. Wilson, yes. Ms. Womack?
Yes.
Ms. Womack, yes.
Yes.
18 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, we on the roll. So. So the yeses have it and the motion is adopted for the proposal. On the next one, the council received 2 proposals to consider for activity 3.1.5. And it was for the training of students with intellectual and developmental disabilities on transitioning to adulthood to include, but not limited to, financial literacy, health, waivers, employment, and voting. After consideration of both proposals, the committee felt that Team Dynamics had the better project summary and work plan to meet the goals for the activity. And therefore, the committee has this recommendation to offer for the council's consideration. So the executive committee recommends approval of Team Dynamics proposal for activity 3.1.5. Because the motion is coming from a committee, it does not require a second. Is there any discussion from council members? Is there any public comment? Are you ready for the question? The question is on recommending the approval of Team Dynamics proposal for activity 3.1.5. We will have a roll call vote. If you are in favor of the motion to accept its approval, when your name is called, say yes. If you are opposed, say no. If you abstain, say abstain. Ebony?
Ms. Aduli? Yes. Ms. Aduli, yes. Ms. Banks?
Yes.
Ms. Banks, yes. Dr. Barabecchio?
Yes.
Dr. Barabecchio, yes. Ms. Bayham?
Yes.
Ms. Bayham, yes. Mr. Billings?
Yes.
Mr. Billings, yes. Ms. Crane?
Yes.
Ms. Crane, yes. Mr. Ennis?
Yes.
Mr. Ennis, yes. Ms. Hagan?
Yes.
Ms. Hagan, yes. Ms. Hayno?
Sorry. Yes.
Ms. Hayno, yes. Ms. Harmon?
Yes.
Ms. Harmon, yes. Ms. Heimel? Ms. Jordan?
Yes.
Ms. Jordan, yes. Ms. Nguyen?
Yes.
Ms. Nguyen, yes. Mr. Biontech? Ms. Richard? Mr. Rocca?
Yes.
Mr. Rocca, yes. Ms. Stewart? Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor, yes. Ms. Washington? Yes. Ms. Washington, yes. Ms. Webb?
Yes.
Ms. Webb, yes. Dr. Wilson?
Yes.
Dr. Wilson, yes. Ms. Womack?
Yes.
Ms. Womack, yes. That's 18 yeas, 0 nays.
Right. The yeses have it and the motion is adopted. Thank you, everyone. Lastly, the committee conducted the first quarterly evaluation for our new executive director. According to the council bylaws, the executive committee has to perform an evaluation on a newly hired ED every quarter. The full council will evaluate the executive director at the April 2025 meeting, which is her anniversary date. Since I was informed by ITAC that council staff should not be involved with collecting the data for the evaluation, staff assisted in creating an anonymous survey in SurveyMonkey, and a compilation of the results was sent directly to me. The survey results were very positive feedback, including how approachable and relatable the ED is. She is available to help and provide assistance at all times, and how the council is in compliance with the state plan mandates, including advocacy, capacity building, and systems change. There was one area of improvement. The committee would like to have a council retreat to get to know one another better so we can work collectively as a team and unit. We will work better together if we build stronger relationships with one another. So the executive director and council staff will look into hosting a council retreat in the near future. I'd also like to add that I will be attending the Cape Youth for the Department of Labor. They are doing a work group. I will be serving on the work group. For the work group is for children with disabilities going into the workforce, employment sector. So the transitioning component as well. So I will be serving on that work board for the next 2 years. And I think Ms. Julie Kagan as well. And that's it. Please, yes.
I don't know if you wanted to mention what you told me yesterday about the teachers, the certified teachers being able to help the workforce.
Oh, yes, for ARC. I spoke with the CEO of ARC, at a women's retreat. And we spoke about during the summer, teachers would like to become workers for their program personnel and the students that they have for the summer. But we do have to speak about the conditions, because going through all the requirements and everything. So I do have to set up a meeting with her, because many teachers have inquired about it, but they don't go through the process because there is a lot of process. So we feel that having teachers who are already certified and having the background, especially in special education, would benefit their constituents, especially during the summer months, and be able to help those in need on a more larger scale, especially during summer. So I am due to give her a call this week or next week and schedule a meeting with her and see what we can do from there. Thank you for the reminder. All right. Thank you, everybody. The next item of business is the Executive Director's report. Ms. Ebony Haven, could you please give us that report?
Yes, ma'am. If you guys look in your packets, on the right side is the gray report. Okay, so I'm just gonna highlight a couple of things for the annual report or the action plan. Updates to the council's 2026 state plan were submitted to the Office of Intellectual and Developmental Disability on June 21st. And these were minor updates on our council membership and changes for our designated state agency, which is the Louisiana Department of Health, due to the changes in administration. So we had to go in and update that information. We actually received approval. When did we receive approval? Like 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
Stephanie? Maybe about 2 weeks ago for those minor updates. And then we will be updating our FY25 action plan based on the approved plan that you guys approved. And that update will be due August 15th. So we should have approval before the next quarterly meeting, and I'll be reporting out on that. Membership update, it's in, like, more detailed information is in the report, but as I mentioned earlier this quarter, we did have 4 members that were not confirmed by the Senate, and the council has sent out advertisements for council membership via our listserv and on our social media to fill those vacancies. The deadline to apply for council consideration is July 26th. So if you know anybody that's interested in applying, please encourage them to do so. Just our legislative update. We sent out an LADDC news on June 17th to recap the session. The council was successful in 2 of our advocacy agenda items, including the additional $500,000 for our Families Help and Family Centers. And we did receive the $10.1 million needed to increase the night rate to match the day rate in the intellectual and developmental disability waivers. There is also a link in my report and in the status report if you're interested in viewing all the bills that the council tracked during the 2024 session. You can look at that. We tracked a bunch of bills, of course. They all have different priorities. The council's advocacy agenda is priority 1. And then we had some bills that we were tracking, which were priority 2 bills. And you can kind of go in that bill tracking and see the outcomes for those bills as well. The next 3 updates I am really kind of excited about. The Louisiana DD Network has rekindled our relationship. I'm very excited about that with the hiring of DRLA's, or Disability Rights Louisiana, new executive director, Ms. Rainey Thompson. We all had a meeting in May where we got acquainted, and we decided that the DD Network in Louisiana should revive our relationship and start collaborating again. So we're going to start meeting quarterly. Our next quarterly meeting is September 11th in New Orleans. So I'm really excited about that collaboration because, like I said earlier, it'll play an important role in our 5-year plan development process. The next exciting change, I am hoping that you guys can all help me welcome Mr. Brenton Andrews to his new position as deputy. Brenton has been with the council for 9 years now. He's been dedicated to LaCan advocacy and just making sure that the council runs well. He is probably the person with the most historical knowledge that we have on staff. So I am very happy to have him in the deputy director position. And then the last update I wanted to mention was our council rebranding. I don't know if you guys noticed, but we got some council swag that we gave you guys, some new notebooks, some new bags, some new pens. The council approved the website overhaul and the rebranding for the FY 25 action plan. And on July 1st, the council released phase 1 of the council's rebranding, our new logo and our new bright colors. And I hope you guys will help me in giving a huge shout out to our program monitor, Hannah Jenkins, for doing an amazing keep an eye on social media because she has some really special things coming out for like the holiday seasons. She did an amazing job with the logo, and I'm just really excited about all the new materials, all the rebranding, the website overhaul, where we're going to try and make things more accessible with easy read materials, especially for our important documents like our bylaws and our action plan and a couple of other documents on the website. So that's my report. I'm happy to take any questions, Christy.
Lauren? Oh, did you want to help Joseph? Jill?
I saw it in here, but is there anything Lauren, you can actually go because I want to look for what I want to say.
Here's just a question for staff. Will we, council or the public have opportunity to give any input into the website, or they're just gonna make it for us?
No.
Just kind of the contract and they run with it kind of thing?
Well, we are gonna contract with the people that host our website right now, GatorWorks. But Stephanie and I were talking, whenever we do the overhaul for the easy read materials, we're gonna make sure that we form some type of work group to help us review those materials to make sure that they are easy to read and they are accessible. And yeah, we are gonna have, I guess, individuals test out the website before it goes live to make sure that things are user-friendly and make sure that it just makes sense to everybody. So yeah, we are planning to do like a small work group, Lauren.
And then, Lafayette, I have some contacts at Affiliated Blind, and they may wanna, before they finalize it, maybe let them go through.
Okay.
And they actually, teach people that are going blind how to use the websites and things like that. They have some really great, I know Lighthouse as well, but y'all are more knowledgeable with them, so might be a good contact.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Jill?
Okay, on the last page at 491, can we advocate against this, or what can we do to stop this? This is not how we operate.
So Jill, are you referring to the, are you referring to the bill that passed that allows the governor to appoint chairs to boards and commissions? So we can't do anything to combat it. The bill passed.
Oh, well. What?
But the good news is he has to use the membership. Yeah, he has to use the membership that is currently on the council, if that makes sense.
That's crap.
I mean, your only course of action, once it passes, is you could try to get some sort of amendment done. The
I
likelihood that
don't
you
know
can get.
how to do that.
Oh, no, I mean, it would be an advocacy agenda item if that is something that the council would want to try to do. I will say the likelihood of removing that from law is pretty low, but you could potentially look at a carve out for certain entities, but it passed with a decent amount of support, so.
And I will say this, I'll add this, Jill, in the bill, it says that he may. It doesn't say that he shall. So, I mean, it could be an instance where, I mean, he doesn't choose to appoint the officers and the chairperson for the DD council.
Okay, well,
Yes. He hasn't yet, so, I mean, I think he does have till August, is it August 15th?
Oh, I don't remember.
It's somewhere in the bill where there is a deadline for him to make those changes. And so I'm optimistic that the council won't be one of the boards or commissions that he chooses to
how
appoint.
many boards and commissions do we have, Bambi?
In the state of Louisiana, we have a lot, Jill. I don't even know how many.
It's 100 something.
It's over a
What
hundred.
do you think?
Over 400.
400?
You would think he had bigger fish to fry, but
Any other questions or comments?
lost you, Christy.
All right, the report requires no action and it will be placed on file. The next item of business is the budget report. The chair recognizes Ms. Ebony Haven for the report.
Okay, so the DD council operates on the federal fiscal year, which is October 1st through September 2nd. However, our budget goes through our designated state agency, which is the Louisiana Department of Health. So we have to run our budget on the state fiscal year, which is July through July 1st to June 30th. So the state fiscal year just ended on June 30th, and that's how these budget reports work. And similar to the local governing entities, when this report was ran, we hadn't gotten all of our June invoices submitted. We hadn't gotten all of our, all of our expenses processed. So some of the percentages are gonna look low, but when we get our everything finalized, all of our invoices processed, the percentages should go up. So one thing you probably will notice is that for travel, we have a lot of money left over in travel. And that's because we've been able to save money having the meetings here in our office. We haven't had to rent out office or meeting space at hotels and things like that. And I'm hoping to use the excess money, not this year, but next year, since one of the executive committee's ideas was to have a council retreat. The staff and I are gonna look at having a really nice staff retreat for you guys. So you guys can get to know each other, build those relationships, and hopefully work together as a unit and a council. And then the only other thing I think I wanted to make sure I mentioned was for operating services. If you notice from April to this report right here, I had to move some money in the equipment rental or the equipment rental. We had some invoices that were not paid for our old machine, and so I had to move some of our money. You'll notice if you look at the April report, I think I moved some from miscellaneous and from our postage. We had excess money in those categories, so I just moved money around there to cover those invoice costs. I'll have a final year-end report at our October meeting, which will have all of our expenses that were covered for that state fiscal year, July to June 30. And I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
I know you said it, but I got kind of caught in the numbers here.
Okay.
Is this for the federal year or the fiscal, or the state fiscal,
The state fiscal year, so our budget
So
runs through LPH,
right? I mean, that is for the state.
yes.
So the balance that's there can be carried forward into
Into the new year.
no.
No.
So anything less than 100%, what happened? Did they go back to the feds? What happened? You know,
Yeah, that's something I would have to look into. I don't know if the money just goes back to the Fed. Oh, do you know?
Well, I don't know. I was gonna ask you, what is your period of performance on your federal grant?
Period of perform, we run on the federal,
yeah,
Right,
so then
but like
it's-
if-
October
We
1st
are-
through the September,
Right, but
30.
in VR, your grant is a 1-year grant, but if you don't have everything obligated by the end of the year, the feds will give you a second year. So do you know how many years your federal grant?
It's 2 years.
It's 2 years.
Yes.
So it
So it's still
should,
there.
it should roll over.
Yeah, and the great thing about right now, since COVID, they've been offering no cost extensions. And I do plan to apply for one. I think the deadline is August 23rd. So since we haven't utilized all those funds, I am going to apply for the no cost extension so the council can utilize those funds. Like I said, we can have a council retreat and we can look into doing some other things.
So do you make sure that you spend all your state general funds in the year of appropriation?
So all of our state general funds go to our families, health and family
Okay.
centers.
So then-
And yeah, all of that money is spent.
So just one last thing on no cost extension. Generally, you need, maybe if you've already talked to your project officer, maybe there's a different office, but generally a no cost extension, the funds have to be used for the purpose they were originally budgeted for.
Right.
So I don't know, you know, if you can do a new activity with that. No
Yeah,
cost.
so we did one last year and it was based on the activities that were continuing.
Right.
So I have to look at the activities that we have that are gonna be continuing in the FY 25 action plan and see which activities I can include in that application.
I would just suggest to you that maybe have that conversation with your project officer
Mhm.
first, because he or she may be able to do it as an exception, especially given the newness of everything and taking over another situation.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. The report requires no action and will be placed on file. The next item of business is committee reports. Our first report, the Act 378 Subcommittee.
I think Bambi's on.
Yeah, she just turned her camera on.
Oh, okay. The chair recognizes Ms. Bambi Tolizola for the report.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yesterday, the Act 378 Subcommittee met, and we did not have any recommendations for the council to consider. We did spend time reviewing fiscal year 24 fourth quarter data for programs within the Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities, Behavioral Health, and Aging and Adult Services through the ARC of Louisiana. These reports can be found linked in our committee agenda on the council's meetings webpage if you would like to review. We really don't have much to report. Our committee had no recommendations for the council to consider. Based on the data, it appears that most of the local government entities or the LGEs are on target with their expenditures for the individual and family support, consumer care resources, supported living, and flexible family funds. We also looked at the state, the SPAS program, the State Personal Assistance Program, and which was able to recognize additional unspent dollars in order to serve families who are on the waiting list needing home modifications, which is really a good thing. We appreciate them doing that. We received all final fiscal year reports. We will receive all final fiscal year reports in October. And at that time, we'll have a better idea if there's any corrective action that will be needed. But none of the department or the state agency representatives felt corrective actions would be needed. And we, certainly appreciate the LGEs and, them their performance. So our meeting was kind of short and brief, and that's good. And also just want to say, if anyone is interested in serving on the Act 378 subcommittee and think they can make the commitment to attend the meetings in person or virtually, you certainly can request that from the chairperson for consideration for appointment. And that's it.
Thank you, Bambi. Any other questions, comments?
Jill has her hand raised.
Who? Oh, Gio, go ahead.
Ma'am, you said FY 23 or 24?
24, which ended June
Okay.
30th. Yeah, but they still have some invoices, that they haven't finished doing all their books for that, because it's only 18 days past that year end. So by October, we'll have everything through that fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2024.
Any other questions?
In fiscal year 2025?
We're now in fiscal year 2025. That started July 1st.
Weird.
Yeah.
I know.
It's fiscal year.
Yeah, it can be confusing a little bit.
Any other questions? All right. This report requires no action and will be placed on file. Right. The next item of business is the report from the Self-Determination Community Inclusion Committee. The chair recognizes Committee Chair Brooke Stewart for the report.
Mike is gonna
Oh, Mike's gonna
do it. He had to fill in for Brooke yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Mike.
Good morning. The Self-Determination Community Inclusion Committee met yesterday and does not have any recommendations to present to the council. We received a lot of great updates during the meeting from our state agency representatives and staff. During our meeting, Julie Foster Hagan with the Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities shared a great update on the new access rule that went into effect this month. There's a great PowerPoint summary of the conversation linked in our committee agenda on the website. Changes to the rule will include payment adequacy and transparency, critical incidents, timeliness of access, quality measure set, fee-for-service grievance process, Medicaid Advisory Committee, and the Beneficiary Advisory Committee. States were given a time frame of 6 to 8 years, depending on the area, to come into compliance with this rule. And some states have expressed concern with the time frame given the changes needed. The changes will also require increased funding. Ms. Hagan also stated the department will be looking at hosting webinars and roadshows to present these changes to the public. Members of the committee expressed the desire to share feedback about the department's progress towards compliance at quarterly meetings, committee meetings. We also received an update on Family Helping Families of New Orleans. Executive Director Aisha Johnson attended to share updates on the center. A few things mentioned were that the auditors have been engaged timely for the fiscal year 24 audit of the center. All deliverables for FY24 have been met. The center did end the year with a $10,000 deficit, but they did see an increase in funding this year. The deficit was related to reduced funding in FY24, and Ms. Johnson is confident the budget for FY25 recently passed by the board will be balanced. They're working toward increased outreaches, especially in rural areas such as Plaquemines Parish. Staff have been going out into the communities rather than waiting at the office for families to seek help. Ms. Johnson did note concerns of the State Department of Education contract in FY25. All centers contracts are currently in limbo. Ms. Johnson affirmed a contingency budget is in place should this contract be cut or reduced to prevent the center from having a deficit in FY25. She also expressed concerns that layoffs were happening at the center. Ms. Johnson stated this was a false rumor. There are no plans to lay off staff. The assistant director is planning to leave the center and hours may be reduced for education staff should the DOE contract be reduced or cut. We also discussed the contractual activities under goals 1 and 2 in our plan, and we encourage you to review the status of planned activities document in your meeting packet for updates on those initiatives. And that is all we have.
Thank you. Is there any comments? Council comments? Any public comments? All right. This report requires no action and will be placed on file. The next item of business is the report of the Education Employment Committee. The chair recognizes Ms. Renata Washington for the report.
All right, good morning, everyone. The Education and Employment Committee met yesterday and does not have any recommendations to present to the council. We received a lot of great updates from the Louisiana Rehabilitative Services and the Louisiana Department of Education. Melissa gave the update on LRS. LRS state plan was provisionally approved because there are not enough people on the council due to administration changes. Planning has begun for pre-employment transition services for the 2025-2026 school year. There is currently a reapplication process for vendors in order to have better consistency of services statewide. Some other efforts include a better referral form for Office of Behavioral Health, and the Office of Workforce Development is currently working with other state programs, such as the Department of Children and Family Services. The collaboration efforts are to have a seamless system through the state. Lastly, LRS is having a shift in procedure where many things that were once happening at the regional level are now going to happen at the state office, allowing field staff to be in the field. We then received an LDOE update from Meredith Jordan. Meredith gave an update on the special education monitoring audit. A detailed audit timeline will be available at the Special Education Advisory Panel on July 31st and presented to the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education in August. In June, LDOE attended a policy writing seminar and asked for a National Office of Special Education Programs funded Technical Assistance Center to review the policy and provide feedback. This feedback is what was used to guide the recommendations for policy changes. The first being the addition of 6 new on-site monitoring positions, doubling the number of people that will be able to do on-site monitoring. New education legislation will require a number of bulletins to be updated to reflect the legislation. The bulletins will go to SEEP in July for their endorsement before they are sent to BESI for approval. SEEP membership received about 100 applicants. The membership committee screened and interviewed applicants. The next SEEP meeting is July 31st. Lastly, Families Helping Families Center submitted proposals for funding to LDOE with decisions being made by the end of the month. We received updates on contractual activities in Goal 3 of the Council's action plan. I encourage you all to review the status update document that we receive quarterly for specific updates on each activity and any of the documents linked in our committee agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Renata. Is there any comments or questions? No public comments? This report requires no action and will be placed on file. I know we're a little early, it's 9:46. There's no objection, the meeting will recess for about 15 minutes. And is that okay with everyone?
Yep.
Hearing none, the meeting is at recess. It is now 9:46. And we will reconvene at 10:04. I think I'm okay. The next item of business is the report of the Bylaws Committee. The chair recognizes Jill Hayno to give the report.
Okay, thank you, Christy. Good morning, y'all. Y'all should have the bylaws in y'all's packet. Our committee met on June 1st. No, I'm sorry. June 7th, and then again on July 1st to make recommendations to change the bylaws, and then councils that we had some recommendations from our staff that we got from ITAC, which is the federal feds. So during the June 7th, it wasn't meant to be one. It was meant to be one meeting, but we couldn't get through it, so we had to schedule a second meeting in between those meetings. I asked Ebony if we could separate the bylaws from our policy procedures to make it two documents in so and the committees will make recommendations to the policies and procedures for our next meeting, which is October 24. And I didn't know if we needed to make a new committee or how that went, Ebony.
Yeah, so Nicole is saying you can use the same members from the Bylaws Committee, Jill.
Oh, okay. Okay, and then we also included our recommendations from our council staff and our parliamentarian Nicole Learson. So now we're gonna go over I'm gonna highlight some major changes in not verbatim, but these changes are all in a hard copy in your packet. But Article 6 is our council membership. We have agency reps that are not in our GD yet. So we added the Office of Aging and Adult Services, OCDD, and Office of Governor's Office of Disabilities Affairs to be stated as our membership. Our virtual protocols were added. We added limited chairs, limitations to chairs, added limitations to elected chairs terms, we changed some language on uninspired membership terms for members filling uninspired uninspired members. No, I'm sorry, I'm bad at this. Uninspired membership terms, we changed it from less than 18 months to less than 12 months. And then we made changes to Article 5, our officers and duties of officers, which y'all can read, section 6 is meaning, and we also change our sections to add or delete whatever. So section 6 is now meetings in attendance, and we removed and then in the new section 4 of Article 6, we added some stricter rules for absence. Oh my God, I'm not saying an embarrassing word. For people not there.
Absence.
Thank you, because it was not gonna come out like that. Then we some stuff in our bylaws we thought would be added to procedures. So like we removed a reimbursement section, and then we have a new section for the executive committee, because like I said, most of this is just moving around. Then committees is our new Article 8. And then we per ITAC, I think we have to review our bylaws once a year, so we added a section for that, and that is all I have. And again, everything is, we also updated our table of content since we moved everything around. So everything's in your packet. And I think that is it. Again, we are gonna review the procedures before our October quarterly meeting. And that should be it, unless Ebony or Nicole Learson have anything to add that I probably missed.
I don't have anything to add. I think Jill did a great job. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer, or Jill.
Yeah.
So-
So Are we here today? Okay, so that's my report and I'll turn it over unless y'all have any questions. I'll turn it over back to Trustee.
So, in the review of the bylaws, just curious, you didn't mention this, but just wondered if there had been has there ever been conversation around the months that we have the council meetings being October, January, April, and July? And I say that just because for those of us that have reports on quarterly data, it feels like we're always saying, but that's not the end of the quarter because of when the meetings are held. So just wondered if this would be the appropriate time for us to consider that. I don't know. I know at one point it was difficult to change them because we had to get the hotel rooms and those kinds of things. But just curious if there has been any conversation around that, or if there could be any consideration to thinking about the months that we hold the.
I don't know if that's a federal thing but I know the schedule in part we're gonna put in our procedures, which is our meeting that will hold this quarter, but anything that's all I have for you, and that's beyond my knowledge.
I did bring this up because I put on this committee. I did bring this up because we are always, and since I've been sitting on the committee, since on the council since 2020, we've always had this issue. So it was a suggestion that we may move it back a month, because that would make more sense. Like, it would make more sense to move all the meetings back 1 month so that everybody reports will come in on the time designated, and we wouldn't be in that problem. Well, we're waiting up on this room report, we're always waiting up on this, and then we're a whole nother 3 months before we actually get to look at the data and then choose, and then
Always playing catch up.
we're always playing catch up. Like, literally, we've been playing catch up forever. So that was the suggestion, just so that we can kind of combat this catch up thing, just like as Julie been saying, like we talk about.
Just piggybacking, I agree with everything that's been said, and on top of that, my annual report for our floor grant is always due on July 30th. So it's bad timing. This meeting is bad timing for me this year. It's particularly bad timing because I have several reports at the end of July. So I would be very happy to see it move, but for both reasons. And then I do have another question, but only if there's time.
Can I make a comment? I think that, and Brenton and I just discussed it, it's always been October. I think it's because they follow the federal fiscal year. So there are certain things that have to be approved by the council at certain times in order for us to get it submitted to our federal partners in a timely manner. I mean, that's not to say that we can't look at other dates that we can have the council meetings, but I think that is why they chose the October, January, April, and July dates, because of the federal fiscal year. I know we run on that state fiscal year, like most of our agencies run on the state fiscal year, but we run on that federal fiscal year.
Yeah, I mean, we have grants on federal fiscal year as well as state, and the quarters are the same. They just start and end at a different point in terms of Q1 in federal fiscal year is Q2 in state fiscal year. The endpoints are the same, if that makes sense. For each quarter, it's just, another number in the rotation. So
Brenton or Ms. Angela?
I guess my thought process is moving back another month, or back, say, one that May, kids are getting out of school, most of us are parents or teachers. So then you can't really leave. If you move it back to November, now you're looking into holidays. are in the school. So I guess, I don't know that people are missing in November. So pushing it back a month may not necessarily work as well. You know.
Oh, my comment was gonna kind of be along the same lines of Angela's. So one of the things that has been helpful in the past is we have that month and we have that time frame. It's always the third Wednesday and Thursday of the month. So if we do move it, you're gonna run into Thanksgiving in November. If we're looking at February, you might run into Mardi Gras. And so then you might not have the opportunity to, and I'm not opposed to move, I'm just throwing that out there. At that point, we might not be able to have it set.
So what, Brendan?
What'd you say, Jill?
You're not opposed.
Hearing last comment. Oh, I'm not necessarily opposed to picking different months. I just don't know if you do move it back a month, because you can't move it up a month because that'll still mess up your reports, even more so. If you move it back a month, there are some timeframes where you're going to start running into maybe some holidays, whether Louisiana specific or not. And so that might make it more difficult for you guys to have a set schedule like we do currently of the third week. So you might, if you do decide to change it, look at maybe setting, you know, the first or second week of whatever that month is, because generally you might not run into Mardi Gras timeframes in February or Thanksgiving in November. That might be something to consider if you're looking at different months. Because I don't know that you really have other options other than going November, February, May, and then August.
I would just add, just to what Brenton is saying, when you're thinking about the schedule that the council follows, you guys set your advocacy agenda in October. And so as staff, we need time to plan for that agenda. We have to make fact sheets. We have to train the LaCan leaders on how to present the information to legislators and their LaCan members. So I agree with Brenton, like, you guys need to consider this very carefully, because there are certain things that we do in certain time periods. Like, we start the roundtables after the January meeting. So we're trying to get those roundtables in February, March, before the session starts. So it's a lot to consider whenever you're thinking about moving things back a month. I would just tell you guys to consider it very carefully.
Could one of the state agencies give us, like the dates of your reporting, just as Bylaws committee would have the months, kind of to, when we're putting all these things into consideration, if someone isn't there to let us know, like, when is y'all, like you said, is it always due on July 30th?
That one particular grant is.
Just one that day, okay.
But it's a big lift on that, because there's a lot of reporting, but the other grant.
Like your regular reporting.
I don't think you can, nothing would accommodate the schedules of our other reporting, I don't think.
And for us, we just are doing reports for the council, so we could do them, you know, as needed. And I guess that was gonna be part of what I said. If it is difficult understanding those things, and I know, Nicole, like you said, it might be that you're looking at older data, but could we, like right now in January, we're trying to look at October, November, December. So we needed to keep it at January. Could we in January look at July, August, September data? And so there is that 3-month delay, but then you're at least getting could you guys, as y'all are looking at process, if we need to, and it sounds like there's valid reasons why we might need to keep them. I do think, Brenton, you could though move it up a month if you're looking at the former data too. So, but we do January, February, March, April, May, June. Like, we do have quarterly data that we collect that we would report. So it would need to be that chunks of January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October.
Okay, so for clarity, and Julie, that was a great question, but like, where, and I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but in the meeting, like, or these proposed changes, we didn't even discuss our calendar, so we're gonna discuss the calendar in our next ad hoc committee meetings, but so these are the proposed changes, and I think that right now we're just making a motion on these proposed changes because we didn't even the calendar was not in this discussion, so I know, so the motion that I want to make a motion to, or to accept these in the calendar isn't I was not impressed y'all with my Robert isn't germane to the motion to approve the bylaws. Am I like, is that correct, or am I don't know what's going on, y'all.
I didn't find. That's right, Brent.
Jill, just really quickly, the part that they're talking about with the dates is on page 6 of your packet. I know you said that we haven't looked at a schedule, but if you look at the bylaws on page 6, it does say it's gonna be held quarterly and it has those months listed. So I think that is the discussion right now. But I understand what you're saying. I just wanted you to know that that's where they were getting that information.
Now I feel, oh my God.
And that wasn't my intention. I was trying to just let you know that that's why that we were talking about it. That's where it was.
Speaking, or kind of continuing what Stephanie had said, something that you could look at doing, I suppose, and I would default to the parliamentarian about an amendment or something if y'all needed to do that. But on page 6, it does say that they'll be held quarterly, and it gives you the October, January, April, and July. You can strike that from your bylaws.
Yeah.
And then you can put that in your policy and procedures, so when that ad hoc committee meets again, this can be discussed in greater detail, and I would encourage anybody here that has skin in the game that really wants to see it change or not change, show up to that meeting to provide your feedback. So your bylaws are just your governing documents, right? It shouldn't be super detailed, so you can remove that there and put the details in your policies and procedures of the specific dates or timeframes within those months that you want to have meetings. That's a thought. Okay.
I'd like to move to a different topic, but still about the bylaws, if I may. And I think you just laid out a vehicle for doing what I want to try to request, at least be considered, is as we attempt to be more of a DD network, it would be very helpful for the Human Development Center for planning and coordination purposes if we could have somebody, even if they don't have voting rights, who's a member of each of the subcommittees, because we work across both of those areas. So it's very different when I hear, and so I would like for that individual to at least be able to bring information to that subcommittee meeting, the one that I would not be at as a council member, and also to receive information that's being discussed there. Sometimes the summaries of one of the subcommittee meetings, education, employment, self-determination, you know, obviously don't have the rich discussion and don't make it clear who's made what position and so forth. So if you're there, if we had a representative there, that information could come back to what we call our leadership team, and we can make adjustments to what we're doing or find out, oh, somebody's really wants to do something and maybe we have resources for that. So before I just put a cap in it, right, is, I do you want to make a comment?
I just was gonna make a comment about it. That was added to section 6 of Article 8. So it does say non-council members, so that could be somebody that is a representative.
So I just wanted to make sure, so that's what really was my question. So I'm sorry to make it so long-winded in that case, but I didn't know if by these subcommittees, those are the standing ones?
Yeah.
No. See, we got.
It was, the standing committees were in there, but the bylaws committee recommended taking out the standing committees and just including subcommittees, ad hoc committees, caucuses, yes. Because Bambi isn't a council member and she serves as the chair for the Act 378 subcommittee. Yeah. So, it was in there, Phil, but it was taken out. But I just want to point out for the Act 378 subcommittee, for example, we have Ms. Tanya Murphy, we have Dr. Savecki from OBH. They aren't council members, but they come to the meetings, they provide information, they participate in the discussion. So they don't have to be appointed to the committee in order to provide the information. So if you wanted that person to be a standing item on the agenda to provide information,
that's not what I want. Okay. I want them to be a full member of that committee. They don't have to vote. But if they have to sit in the audience and wait their turn to speak, then that will be like, it's not the same as being engaged in those conversations.
Well, no, yesterday Tanya Murphy was at the table. She wasn't in the audience.
Okay, I didn't know.
Yeah, they are active.
Really be, so as long as we have that, so that's in here, then I'm happy, and I will be sending somebody who actually sat in on the Zoom yesterday, Constance Alphonse, who really would be a great person to come, and I might have to switch subcommittees if that can be worked out, but that's not for the meeting, I'm sorry.
No,
I didn't realize.
That was on my list of things for us to talk about later, Phil, too. So, no.
Laura?
You just beat me to the punch.
I'm sorry, just to speak to it, Phil, yeah, and is Tanya always on the agenda usually? Is that her report?
Yes, they're there to present the information.
It's just like this, it's just a member doesn't vote. So I think it's exactly what you want, you're looking for.
I just didn't want to come and say, oh, here's my
No,
report.
and she doesn't have to wait till the end.
Okay.
It was on our agenda too, and we had, just like we had our summary reports, she had all her data. So even if y'all can,
I don't feel the need for that individual to give a report to the
No,
committee.
just to be,
come
yeah.
and be a committee member.
Yeah, okay,
Because we do the report.
right, anyway.
Any other questions or comments?
So I'd like to make a motion to add Article 6, Section 1, to delete the month, October, January, April, and July.
Oh.
Wait, Julie, repeat that.
At Article 6, Section 1, to delete the months, October, January, April, and July. That doesn't mean we're changing them, but then it gives us the ability to look at that in the procedure if it's not specifically mentioned in the bylaws.
So it is moved to delete the months of October, January, April, and July, and just leave it where it's held quarterly, correct? And it's, any discussion?
Oh, wait, hold on, because Nicole, I might need your help. So before in Christie, I think I might be overstepping, but confused. Before we what? do we need, I don't know, do we need to adopt a motion before we
When the first.
start amending?
The motion.
Yes, okay,
She had planned to make the motion.
Yes. yes,
I'm
okay.
so confused.
You're right,
I
you're
don't
right.
like this.
You're correct though.
Okay,
So-
cool.
Go ahead.
So on B, so the bylaws, I would like to make a motion is the bylaw on behalf of the bylaws committee to accept these bylaws as written.
Thank you, Jill. Because this motion is coming from a committee, it does not require a second. And we had discussion. Any more discussion? We have an amendment from Ms. Julie Hagan to, the meetings will still be held quarterly, but just to delete the name of the months, correct? Correct. Just delete October, January, April, and July. And it was, any objection?
So can I ask a clarifying question? Are we on the motion that Julie made now, or are we still on Jill's motion? I guess I'm a little confused.
Is it two separate motions or is it just amending first?
So let me just give some clarification. So the motion is the motion that Jill made. But what Julie is doing is changing that or amending that motion so that what we accept is the proposed bylaws as amended.
Okay.
So that's how it would read in the minutes. So we handle Julie's motion to amend, and Chrissy can do that by unanimous consent. And if there is no objection, then the motion would be Jill's motion of accepting the bylaws as amended. And it would just simply be that motion that appears, that motion as it's read. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Since we did, there was second.
Okay, ask if there's any.
Is there any objections
To the amendment.
to the amendment?
I object.
All right, now you have to take a formal vote.
All right, Ebony, can you
Do you need a second on the amended?
On the amended motion?
She got it.
we have a second.
Oh,
Lauren.
okay, we didn't hear it, sorry.
I need some clarification. Okay, so, Master. Master Christie?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I'm looking at you because I'm looking at the board. I apologize. So we amend the bylaws to just delete those months. We're gonna have a discussion on the months and put in the policy part.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is a subsequent meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay,
We're not-
got it.
You'll
We're
get
not
that
getting rid of them, we're just moving them.
Right, okay, all right. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Right, so since there is an objection to removing the minutes, you have to take a roll call.
Ebony, can you give us a roll call? When your name is called, say yes. If you are opposed, say no. You abstain, say abstain.
Can you state the motion, Christie?
Yes, I'm gonna repeat it.
Oh,
So that's okay. We're doing a roll call vote to amend the proposed bylaws to delete the months of October, January, April, and July. All right, of the proposed bylaws. It was, amendment was made by Ms. Julie Foster Hagan and seconded by Ms. Lauren Womack.
Okay, so whenever I call your name, if it's yes, you are agreeing to the amendment. If you don't agree to the amendment, say no. Mr. Dooley?
Yes.
Mr. Dooley, yes. Ms. Banks?
Yes.
Ms. Banks, yes. Dr. Baravecchio?
She's there. I have to say it again.
Dr. Baravecchio, can you hear us?
She's on mute.
You're muted.
I'm sorry, my computer is like acting up and it would not unmute no matter how many times I clicked it. Yes, I agree.
Okay, Dr. Baravecchio, yes. Ms. Bayham?
Yes.
Ms. Bayham, yes. Mr. Billings?
Yes.
Mr. Billings, yes. Ms. Crane?
Yes.
Ms. Crane, yes. Mr. Ennis?
Abstain.
Mr. Ennis abstains. Ms. Hagan?
Yes.
Ms. Hagan, yes. Ms. Hano?
Abstain.
Ms. Hano abstains. Ms. Harmon?
Yes.
Ms. Harmon, yes. Ms. Heimel? Ms. Jordan?
Yes.
Ms. Jordan, yes. Ms. Nguyen?
Yes.
Ms. Nguyen, yes. Mr. Piontek? Ms. Richard? Mr. Raka?
Yes.
Mr. Raka, yes. Ms. Stewart? Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor, yes. Ms. Washington?
Yes.
Ms. Washington, yes. Ms. Webb?
No.
Ms. Webb, no. Dr. Wilson?
Yes.
Dr. Wilson, yes. Ms. Womack?
Yes.
Ms. Womack, yes.
15 yeas, 1 nay, and 2 abstentions.
Okay, so the yeses have it and the motion to amend the proposed bylaws to delete the months October, January, April, and July have passed.
So the motion is to adopt the proposal.
Okay, and so now the motion is to adopt the bylaws that were presented by the bylaws committee to adopt the proposed bylaws as amended.
Any discussion?
Any discussion? Public comment? No? So the question is that the motion is that we approve the bylaws committee. I'm sorry, the proposed bylaws that were reviewed by the bylaws committee and accept them as amended. You have a question?
How's this different from the previous motion?
So the previous motion was, we want to adopt these bylaws, but we want to change them first. So you voted on the change to the bylaws, and now that you've changed them, now do we adopt the changed bylaws? Does that make sense? For example, I'll give a simpler example. If the motion was to paint the house blue, and then someone made a change to say, I want to add the word light into it so that it's light blue, you vote on whether or not to add the word light, and then once you agree, then you vote on whether or not to paint the house light blue. Does that make sense?
So if I disagreed with the previous motion, I'd still disagree now?
No, you could agree with the motion even though you disagree with the previous. It's you vote your conscience. Whatever you feel is right.
Wouldn't it conflict if I voted yes now, though?
Not if you agreed with the majority of the changes. Just because you don't agree with one of the changes made doesn't mean that you don't agree that the bylaws overall is a good document to adopt. So you just have to vote what you think is right.
Do what you feel.
It's probably gonna pass either way.
All right, so the question is that we approve the proposed bylaws as amended. The roll call vote, Ebony?
Okay, Mr. Dooley?
Yes.
Mr. Dooley, yes. Ms. Banks?
Yes.
Ms. Banks, yes. Dr. Baravecchio?
Oh, there's a.
We have a council member with her hand raised. Nicole, can we take the comment or are we already in the middle?
We're already
of Okay.
I'm sorry,
I'll-
I'm sorry. I vote yes, just my computer's tapping in and out.
Dr. Baravecchio, yes. Ms. Bayham?
Yes.
Ms. Bayham, yes. Mr. Billings?
Yes.
Mr. Billings, yes. Ms. Crane?
Yes.
Ms. Crane, yes. Mr. Ennis?
Abstain.
Mr. Ennis abstains. Ms. Hagan?
Yes.
Ms. Hagan, yes. Ms. Hayno?
Abstain.
Ms. Hayno abstains. Ms. Harmon?
Yeah.
Ms. Harmon, yes. Ms. Hymo? Ms. Jordan?
Yes.
Ms. Jordan, yes. Ms. Nguyen?
Yes.
Ms. Nguyen, yes. Mr. Piontek? Ms. Richard? Mr. Rocca?
Yes.
Mr. Rocca, yes. Ms. Stewart? Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor, yes. Ms. Washington?
Yes.
Ms. Washington, yes. Ms. Webb?
I don't know if I want to abstain or say no.
That's your choice.
No.
Ms. Webb, no. Dr. Wilson?
Yes.
Dr. Wilson, yes. Ms. Walmack?
Yes.
Ms. Walmack, yes.
15 yeas, 1 nay, 2 abstentions.
Right. So the yeses have it and the motion is adopted. Whew.
Good job, y'all.
We did it, but it's really, all right. Jill?
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So what, ma'am? So, okay, I'm thinking, what? That concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay.
Right? I'm sorry, y'all.
You want to do anything?
Hold on. Can I say something?
Yeah.
Bill, I think there was another motion that Nicole discussed with you, Nicole Learson discussed about making minor changes to the bylaws, giving the executive director permission to make those minor changes based off,
Yeah.
discussions from the council. So the bylaws committee won't have to meet to make changes to our DSA or capital letters or things like that. Just minor technical changes.
Jill. Unmute Jill.
Okay, what section on page 8, Ebony?
It's not in the bylaws. It was in the report that Nicole sent.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, y'all. I had it, but then I didn't. Okay, so hold on. Okay, so
Yeah.
God, this is so bad, y'all. Okay, so I think I have another motion to make.
Go on.
My next item is, no, it's not. Jill for Cherry.
Jill, would you like some help?
Yes, Christie, I would, because I am so
It's
lost.
okay. She wanted to make a motion that, the executive director be authorized to correct articles and section designations, punctuations, cross-references and any other technical and conforming changes, necessary that reflects the intent of the council in connection with approved bylaw changes.
Yes, here it is. What she said. To give Ebony.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Mike. It is moved and seconded to allow the executive director to authorize technical and conforming changes to reflect the intent of the council in connection with approved bylaw changes. Is there any discussion from committee members? Any public comment? I'm ready for the question, and it is that we allow the executive director be authorized to correct article section designations, punctuations, and other technical and conforming changes to reflect the intent of the council in connection with approved bylaw changes. All right. So when Ebony calls your name, please respond with yes if you are in favor of this motion, no if you're opposed, and abstain if you want to abstain.
Mr. Dooley? Yes. Mr. Dooley, yes. Ms. Banks?
Yes.
Ms. Banks, yes. Dr. Baravecchio?
Yes.
Dr. Baravecchio, yes. Ms. Bayham?
Yes.
Ms. Bayham, yes. Mr. Billings?
Yes.
Mr. Billings, yes. Ms. Crane?
Yes.
Ms. Crane, yes. Mr. Ennis?
Yes.
Mr. Ennis, yes. Ms. Hagan?
Yes.
Ms. Hagan, yes. Ms. Hano?
Yes.
Ms. Hano, yes. Ms. Harmon?
Yes.
Ms. Harmon, yes. Ms. Heimel? Ms. Jordan?
Yes.
Ms. Jordan, yes. Ms. Nguyen?
Yes.
Ms. Nguyen, yes. Mr. Piantek? Ms. Richard? Mr. Rocca?
Yes.
Mr. Rocca, yes. Ms. Stewart? Mr. Taylor?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Taylor, yes. Ms. Washington?
Yes.
Ms. Washington, yes. Ms. Webb?
Yes.
Ms. Webb, yes. Dr. Wilson?
Yes.
Dr. Wilson, yes. Ms. Womack?
Yes.
Ms. Womack, yes. 18, yes.
Okay, the yeses have it, and the motion is adopted. The next item of business is the review of the FFY 2025 action plan and the public comments received regarding the action plan. The chair recognizes Ms. Ebony Haven to start discussion and share public comments.
Okay. So we received 2 public comments on the FY 25 action plan. They're included in your packet. One of the public comments was about activity 3.1.5, the transition to adulthood activity.
Getting ahead of myself, but not the ones on the screen.
And then there was a public comment about the activities that we will be doing with the Human Development Center. So I don't know if you guys have questions.
What was the comment?
Well, you can read them. They're included in your packet. They're on the left side.
After the.
Yes. And I sent them on July 3rd with the additional information, with the bylaws. I sent the, public comment as well.
So, I mean, I can withhold my comment on the comment about the FASC work and both people have their questions, but there is some information that I would like to provide. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what we propose to do. And this thing about a grant that I have no idea where that, we have not applied for a grant. If I knew where there was one, we would apply, but people want to ask their other questions first, or can I just kind of respond to this public comment? Okay, so just sort of point by point, we do have a plan, and I promised to Ebony as soon as this council meeting is over, And if I had the grace to finish our annual report, I would definitely have it, a budget and goals and objectives. But I can give you an idea of what we are doing, and we've already moved forward. We've begun the work with our own funds to work with the Department of Child and Family Services foster care system. We are not identifying kids. We're not doing a diagnostic clinic in any way, shape, or form. That might be something in the future. But as you might surmise, that's a very expensive thing to do. And it's not high on our priority list to diagnose kids. So what we are going to do with the funds is we have Dr. Krista James is a parent of 3 children, or adults now, with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. She's has her PhD in special education. She's worked for us collectively for about 7 or 8 years, about five years probably. She worked for us for 2 or 3 years, went to Alaska for 10 years and came back and has worked with us for about 2 years again. She works on our LaSARD project, so she's in school districts providing training and technical assistance and so forth. When she was in Alaska, she worked on their FASD outreach project, which is called None for Nine. So back to what we are going to do. So we do have a staff person that we're paying with our own funds. If we receive these funds, they wouldn't come till October 1st, correct? So again, I'm not quite sure where some of this criticism is coming from. But what Krista and I, but primarily Krista, have arranged with Elizabeth Green of Region 7 would be Monroe, is that right? I'm bad at regions.
Region 8 is Region 8.
Yeah. We are going to begin training in every region of the state in a calendar way. The social workers that work for a foster care system of DCFS on a variety of things having to do with sort of identifying this is a child that might have FASD, so let's try these strategies, or you are doing foster care, or you have family that is. These are things that we know from the literature and from firsthand experience are things that you should do with those children to address their, developmental disabilities, but also, very importantly, their mental health challenges. And, so we are going to do a tandem training in each region of the state. We want to work with families, helping families to have them help us recruit the family component and for them to go through the training there, because families will come to them after all this is done. So we want to leave them with some resources and knowledge. We will train the social workers who are working with those families, probably in a separate training for now, because the information will be relatively different that the social workers will need. So, I think we have a very concrete plan. We have our staff person identified. We will be looking for grants to write for, or requesting some advocacy support to go to the state and say, hey, maybe this is something the state should get behind. But there is absolutely no plan to set up a diagnostic clinic at this point. And there is no $950,000 grant. So I'm not quite sure where some of this misinformation has come from.
Yes, I know, Phil, being on the planning committee, one of the reasons we allocated, because we were talking about it coming from the federal government, and that one of the, maybe part of the confusion is, I don't know where, but we were talking about y'all having to try to find some good diagnostic tools, and that does cost money to research that and figure out, or maybe develop. So maybe that's where that came in. I don't know, but just speaking, I know deliberating, we didn't, in the discussions, wasn't just throwing this money away. We anticipated that it will be a problem, and we know, concretely. So, I don't know if the council wants to request, maybe just Phil adds that in his updates.
Oh, yes,
You could just share
we will,
stuff like that
absolutely.
on the contract or,
Yeah, and
and add a link to your website for anybody in the public that's concerned about
We
where the
have
money is going, yeah, and which you have to report anyway.
And
But-
we have not a link, but a home landing page on our website about for FASD. We've also established a chapter of FASD United, which is the national organization that does policy and advocacy and family support work. And we want support to help us find these families and recruit them. So, I mean, that the council could also play a role in that. And part of the funding through conversation with Ebony was we will also simultaneously use part of those funds to develop an awareness campaign, which will be primarily driven most likely through web and social media and perhaps a PSA of some sort. And we would do that in collaboration, obviously, with the council, and the council would be credited with whatever product comes out, for sure.
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. I see now why maybe Lauren was questioning the materials and stuff. I'd be happy to send all the information. I see the comment about the education and employment contract, and I'd be happy to share with the entire group if you want on the materials that we bring out there. We are not gatekeeping anything by no means. And I'd be happy to share with anyone. So if you want, I can send it to the board. That's up to Ebony and Paul. But I'd be happy to share with all of y'all our materials. By no means are we meaning to keep anything from anybody. We turn in our stuff to the contractors, and what they choose to do with it is up to them. So just let me know. But I see this comment, and I hope nobody really thinks it's a waste because we think we're doing a good job. But if they want the material, please let me know, and I'll be happy to send it.
Thank you. You have 2 names. Okay, so I'm going off of the Samantha comment about the $950,000 grant. You don't work for LSU, right?
Yeah, I'm a professor.
Oh, okay, so you work, so
LSU
in,
Health Science Center, which is part of the LSU system, but it's more medical.
so you don't have to sit on the department that handles the grants and that does the grant writing and that.
Yeah, that's how we exist. We don't get money from the state. We exist through grants, period, and contracts. If we don't do that, we don't exist.
Okay, well, I mean, that's why I was clarifying and asking, because maybe she just didn't know what you did or where you worked at and, you know, the things that, yeah.
Or who, I don't want to personalize this.
Well, I mean, it's her
I
comment.
know, I see it's public, but
Yes.
but I don't want this to become a personal thing. So
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is that the only thing I can think is the Respect Act is the piece of national legislation that we have advocated for with our legislative representatives at the state and national level to pass. But the Respect Act has been in existence for 7 or 8 years now as a bill. And it's really gone through many, many revisions. It's quite possible that early on, there was something written into one of the versions of this Respect Act that says there's going to be this money for each state. The current form of the Respect Act supposedly has some money in it for states, but most of it goes to the federal government.
Right.
And then if they choose to let it out or something, there may be. There is nothing that I'm aware of or could possibly write for. We don't have an act yet. We just have a bill. So that's the only place I can think that maybe she had.
Yeah, because I just was like, how did she get this information? Like, where did it come from?
Well,
Like,
it's such an exact number and whatever.
Right.
It's
Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's such a big number and.
Yeah.
I wish there was.
Okay.
No, and I want to make it clear to both Phil and to Kelly, like, I just want to make sure access of information, like it's being a person with a disability. I'm a nerd, but I like to research. But if you're a parent and you've got a bunch of kids, you kind of want to have one place, okay, this is where all my stuff is. You don't want to have to go to a bunch of different websites, like learning. I never knew that Human Development Center had their, own website and then the council and everything like that. I just want to make sure that if we're doing something and we're advocating, we have a one-stop shop, that we have all of this easy access. It's not about, and y'all do great with that. And I know Ark does, and I did not mean to put you on black. You're just here to use this as an example because we don't have a lot of other contractors. And I love that y'all keep your stuff up, which is great. But somebody that might not be associated with the art, maybe a parent just through the school system, might not have transition to that toolkit. They may only know through the council.
Yeah, no, I have no problem with the
Yeah.
comment at all. I just wanted people to know that
Yeah.
if they wanted, obviously it wasn't from someone else also felt
Right.
the same way. And if someone wants it, I'd be happy to give it, but it doesn't really belong to me. Because
Right.
the council bought it when
Yeah.
they contracted
Mhm.
with us. It turns out it's their material. So, but if they want me to send it out, I'd be happy to send it,
Yeah.
whoever.
And thank you for being accessible and answering our questions. I would appreciate it.
And just one follow-up, is just sort of anything that the council wants us to put on our website as a link back to your website is, we'd love to do that. And I think we have done that with some things. And certainly the awareness campaign, the more websites it's on, the better. So where that actual thing sits for us isn't giant, other than what I said earlier about the university, but they don't really pay for us. They give us a place to live.
Facebook and all is
Yeah.
gonna be with the council. We're getting together, it's gonna be wonderful.
Ebony had, 3 hands are raised on the Zoom.
Okay.
You have, Dr. Patty was first, Pasquale was second, and Jill was third.
Dr. This a whole. I remember that. Oh, yes, thank you.
Thank you. I thought I heard mention of Title V, and I'm getting a lot of muffling this morning. Just wanted to see where if there was a mention of Title V, and what is our role, or how can we support this effort?
There was no mention.
There was no mention of Title V, in the public comments, Patty.
Okay. Just whatever information there are around this initiative. We'd be happy to help disseminate, but I'm sorry, but I thought I heard Title V called out, so I wanted to check in on that comment.
Oh, you won't escape me, Patty.
Pascal?
Hey, hi, everybody. I have a few questions I wanted to ask. First, I wanted to know, why did you choose to experiment on children in foster care? That's my first question.
Well, we're not experimenting on them. It's that is odd. I think I made a presentation to the council informally. Maybe it was just in our education and I think it was just in the subcommittee, but children in foster care are way, way, way more likely to have fetal alcohol spectrum disorder than children in the general population. That may be sort of akin to some of the challenges that birth mothers who have children with FASD, who have consumed alcohol and other drugs and teratogens during their pregnancy, may be more, those children are something, I don't want to quote a number because I'll give you the wrong one, but it's a magnitude of more than 20%, probably more than 50% more likely to have FASD if they're in foster care than just the general children in the general population, which is 1 in 20 already. Does that answer your question? First question?
Yeah, that's fine. And another one was, the next one was going to be, what is the data on children actually being removed from their parents for alcohol use?
I can't tell you that. We'd have to get, I don't know if DCFS even tracks that specific piece of information. But we know a lot of the children do end up in foster care or sometimes adoptive care, hopefully at some point in their life.
Okay. And then, also, is it the family's decision or is it DCFS's authority to approve them to be experimented on? I say experimented, you say research, it's this pretty much the same thing, but is it their decision, the family and the children's decision to approve this, or DCFS?
So there's no research. We are training social workers who are working with the families, the foster families, how to sort of be able to provide services that will be supportive to the foster families. And because they still, in some cases, if the child hasn't been given up for, to the state, then they may still be in contact with the actual birth mother. And typically foster care still has a first line of plan is to get that child back into their natural biological family, right? So then the next piece of our training is to actually train those foster families, because those are the ones that we know. We can't, for HIPAA and confidential and privacy rights, we can't know who the birth mothers and families are, right? So we're going to work with those people who have been been entrusted to care for these children, right? It's not, and it's using evidence-based practices that have been researched, but not by us. We're just going to teach and provide training and coaching to the people, either the foster care social workers and the foster care parents who have responsibility for these children. There's no research.
Okay, so there won't be any training for birth parents at all for this?
Not with this particular first round. We don't know who they are. And we have to figure that out, but maybe by starting with getting embedded in the system, maybe they will decide, okay, they can do the training because they're allowed to know, obviously, who those families are. Or if the families want us to train, we're happy to do that, but we can't just go there. Does that make sense? There's a, privacy, right?
Yeah, I understand that.
And of course, nobody's going to be forced to go to the training in terms of probably even the foster families at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Jill?
So I understand that it's in the plan that this contract isn't bid out, isn't something we bid out. It was exclusively for HDC to do this work for the council, and that I understand, and I know you're very busy, but for transparency purposes, my question is, would it be beneficial for you to maybe write up a little work plan?
There will be goals and objectives and a scope of work, just like any other DD Council funded projects or activity. This won't start till October 1st, so we've been given a little bit of a grace period to get. There's a lot of pieces that have to get connected, and I think, frankly, I'm pretty proud of the fact that we already have the partners and we're doing statewide trainings and trying to connect with our families organizations. And actually, one of the things on my list was to ask the council if we can invite the LACAN leaders for each of those regions to come too, because this is a big job that we can't do by ourselves. nor can the council or anybody else. We're all gonna have to kind of work together to raise this awareness and then get the services out there.
Is what you're proposing going to help these kids gain access to much needed services, given we know DCFS means well, but has no idea how to spot or navigate actual medical hidden disabilities related to people?
Those are the types of things that will be included in the training. I can't make another state agency or a state agency, I can't speak for them. But the fact that, we're doing this for them at no charge, and we're starting now. I mean, we plan to begin the first trainings in August or September. So before we've even received funding. Okay, and then after that, we want to do the whole state, not just, New Orleans or Lafayette or whatever. We're going to be in every region. So I think when we have that curriculum, which is being written as we speak by Dr. James, it'll come to the council. You guys, we would love for you to provide input on it. If you think there are things that we're not covering, we will definitely take your feedback and try to incorporate those things.
Ebony?
I was just gonna say, and for the FY 25 action plan, the activities get assigned to a committee. So I'm thinking that these particular activities will be assigned to the Self-Determination and Community Inclusion Committee. And so the program monitor or manager that's assigned to those specific contracts will be able to make sure we give you guys feedback on how the contract is going, how the trainings are going. We try to provide as much information as possible so that you guys can provide feedback if it's not meeting the goals and objectives that you had in mind when you set the activity in the plan. So we're gonna make sure that we are communicating with you all, and I'm sure Phil will be at those meetings as well.
Yeah.
And he can answer any questions that you guys have.
And may I?
Oh, yes.
And anything that we do, folks, from this point forward or backwards or inside out, everything we do is open to the public, right? If we have a contract to go work with a certain agency or a certain school district or whatever it is, we'd have to have their permission for you to be in their facility or their school or whatever. But basically, one of the reasons we want to have helping families involved is so that we can get families to foster families or biological family members to come to these trainings. We just can't reach them. But what I was going to say, you guys are always welcome to not only see our curriculum, but to sit in the audience. And as council members, if there's any kind of a fee, we're not planning a fee. This is a free training. But if there were one, I would guarantee you we will waive it for a council member or a member of our own Consumer Advisory Council. Okay. Constituent Advisory Council. They changed the name on it. So yes, sir.
So how long, even though how long do y'all got a program when you watch the parents? How long does that take up? I know you're saying y'all still.
So what we're trying to do is this initial training will be not what we want to we would love to be able to go and do training with individual parents, almost like early steps, right? If they need us in their home or their school or their job site or their community recreation center, or whatever, that's where the training should take place with real world stuff. Right. But given $50,000 and 10 of it's already earmarked for a awareness campaign, that gives $40,000. We're barely going to be able to pay Dr. James's salary and her travel because going around the state, can add up quick. So
correct, but
so we will keep looking for other sources of funds and build this out.
But your goal is not to just pull a child. Your goal just to work with the parents and make sure they get back to the level that they need to get back to being.
Yeah, so for the type of funding that we're talking about, which we will be putting in our own to kind of bump it up a little bit.
Right.
the best we're gonna be able to do is kind of more like a classroom style for the parents. And then a different trainings in the same region for the professionals that are from DCFS that are serving them. So we try to get the same information out for everyone, but it needs to be presented differently. Because a social worker is gonna have a different kind of background and interest in terms of their professional duties than what a parent's gonna have. They're gonna be more interested in the actual, what do I do when my child has a tantrum, or, you know, if he does something one day and the next day he won't. And those are the type of things that, or he seems to be anxious or depressed. That back to, I think, Vivian's question, you know, we will make sure that we do the best we can to link them with the resources, but we won't be in all over the state. So we have to depend on those services there at that point to kick in.
So let me ask you this then. If it's parents that got, I'm gonna just say disabled child, and they don't know how to deal with that child with a disability, but their contentions is good, and they fall down. And my question: how would you deal with that parent to fully get that parent on a level saying, okay, we're gonna get you at a point where you to a level where you come and you understand what's going on, if I'm making sense to you?
You make great sense. Unfortunately, so if you look at what we do with our LaSarge project, which is the Louisiana Autism Related Disabilities Project, we send our facilitators, such as Dr. James, into a school district, and she spends time in the actual school, in the actual classrooms, with the actual teachers and therapists and whatnot, to coach. After they've been trained, we give them a little training, and then we coach them live and in person to actually implement the things that we have taught them, right? Because there's one thing about taking a test and getting all the answers right, and there's another thing about going back and actually doing it, correct? So that's a very labor-intensive and very expensive way to provide services. We can't do that for $50,000 for the whole state, or 40,000, I should say. But that is our intention, to use that same model I just described eventually, when we can figure out how do we pay for that. We don't want to charge the families, so obviously we need to figure out that will take time, but this is a first baby step. And we think we can make a difference with the baby step, and we get going. We walk, we crawl, whatever we do, and hopefully one day these young people have a better life.
Well, and Dr. Wilson, you don't have to do any of this. And so hats off to you, and thank you for your advocacy for these children who are so at risk, who slip through the cracks. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Not me, but
I think everybody
that's
here making this happen. It's important, so thank you.
I do appreciate that comment, and I will take that back and share it.
Thank you.
So there is, do you have another question, Lauren?
Just
Okay.
one more comment too. When we're talking about the Latin bylaws, we also wanted to, and maybe Nicole can speak to this, that any subcommittees, the chair can appoint anyone from the public to subcommittee. Is that correct? So anyone who's not on a committee that wants to be from the public involved in coming to like the action plan meetings and things like that. Am I correct in saying they are invited to talk to Christie, and if they would like to be appointed and included, especially some of these people that, have public comment, we wanted to make sure, I know in bylaw meeting that it's very clear that they are included if they want to actually come and be a part of the meetings. Just wanted to go on record for saying that. And one more thing, for the transition plan, action plan thing, do you know if the contractor And I thought that they did, was gonna get impact into our families. Which activity was it? It was the one about the transition plan that we were talking about, team dynamic. The team dynamic. Yeah. That we just make sure, in the contract,
Yeah, the wording.
the wording, and then our families that we choose, like that are in Louisiana. And in our region, and family helping families are on those focus groups.
Okay.
So we make sure that it's tailored to our needs and not just generic. That's just a,
And we can
request.
add that to our wording whenever we do the contract.
We have a public comment, Ms. Brenda Cosey.
Yes, Ms. Kosai?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Parents, including training, funding makes supports a reality, even if for a few. Thank you.
Thank you. Ebony, was there a change made to the plan recently?
So there was a minor change that Stephanie and I made to the plan. Well, there's a minor change and a major change. The minor change was that we added the partners alumni event to activity 1.1.1. It was two separate activities, but we just decided to add it together because the activity 1.1.1 addresses alumni events. So the funding didn't change. We just added those two activities together. And Stephanie's gonna go over the second change.
The second change was something that I went to a training with ITAC last week, literally last Thursday, and they suggested that all councils include, oh, that's not the right thing. I'm sorry, I meant to highlight this one. They suggested, or I guess recommended, that all councils have an objective for an emergent need issue. I know that we have activities that say emergent need if something were to arise in education or advocacy, but they said to have an overall objective. And this is in the case of something like flooding. If there's a major flood and we need to change kind of our focus to help those families and those individuals with developmental disabilities in that area. And with it being hurricane season, it happens every year. I think that having that objective is a good idea. There do not have to be any kind of activities under it because it's to be determined. So there may not be anything for the year. If something does come up, it doesn't necessarily have to be added to here. We just have to get approval from our federal partners that we can allocate funds to that and shift our focus over. So there wouldn't have to be any kind of approval, any kind of change process. It would just be what we think that we need to do as the council and in order to shift that focus over. So I did draft up this objective. So it says individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families will have access to additional resources, time, and or activities based on emergent needs and issues that may arise.
If it is the council's will to ratify the change made to the plan, a council member may make a motion to do so.
I make a motion to ratify the change.
Is there a second?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Eric. Nicole. Right. So it is moved and seconded to ratify the change made to the plan. Adding the objective and also putting the activities together. Is there any discussion from committee members? Public comment? Here's the question. So the question is that we we ratify the change made to the plan. And it's about adding the objectives to 2.4 and also merging the two activities together. When Ebony calls your name, please respond with yes if you are in favor of the motion, no if you're opposed to the motion, or abstain if you're not voting.
Ms. Aviles?
Yes.
Ms. Aviles, yes. Ms. Banks?
Yes.
Ms. Banks, yes. Dr. Baravecchio?
Yes.
Dr. Baravecchio, yes. Ms. Bayham?
Yes.
Ms. Bayham, yes. Mr. Billings?
Yes.
Mr. Billings, yes. Ms. Crane?
Yes.
Ms. Crane, yes. Mr. Ennis?
Yes.
Mr. Ennis, yes. Ms. Hagan?
Yes.
Ms. Hagan, yes. Ms. Hano?
Yes.
Ms. Hano, yes. Ms. Harmon?
Yes.
Ms. Harmon, yes. Ms. Hyman? Ms. Jordan?
Yes.
Ms. Jordan, yes. Ms. Nguyen?
Yes.
Ms. Nguyen, yes. Mr. Piontek? Ms. Richard? Mr. Rocca?
Yes.
Mr. Rocca, yes. Ms. Stewart? Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor, yes. Ms. Washington?
Yes.
Ms. Washington, yes. Ms. Webb?
Yes.
Ms. Webb, yes. Dr. Wilson?
Yes.
Dr. Wilson, yes. Ms. Womack?
Yes.
Ms. Womack, yes. 18 yeas, 0 nays.
The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Right? The next item of business is standing council member reports. Please refer to the reports in your packet. Our first report is from the Bureau of Health Services Financing with Medicaid. The chair recognizes Brian Bennett for the report.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So in the report, it's kind of broken into two different sections. On the first page, there are a few updates that are primarily eligibility related, work that we've been doing with Medicaid eligibility redeterminations. And then the second half is just a high level overview of some of the programs and services that we have. So as far as updates, many of you are aware of our unwind efforts that we've been involved with for some time now. And basically, those are just unwinding some temporary flexibilities that we implemented during the COVID-19 public health emergency. So one of the big ones that we had was during the PHE, all of our eligibility redeterminations that we typically do every year, those were paused. And we just started resuming those redeterminations in May of last year, which involved us looking at around 2 million people that were currently at the time on Medicaid and receiving coverage. That year-long effort was wrapped up in May of 2024. So now we're just going to return to our annual renewal process where everyone's looked at every 12 months and we'll more or less be on our normal schedule going forward. Also related to eligibility is we are resuming our wage checks. So this was something that we started just prior to COVID-19. I think we might have done this for about a year or a year and a half. And then, of course, during the PHE, we paused this. But wage checks are another piece of the Medicaid eligibility process. And they're completed when Medicaid receives data from the Workforce Commission that prompts us to look at an individual's income and verify that they still meet the requirements for Medicaid coverage. And just like renewals, for the wage checks, we'll send out a letter requesting information or documentation. And it's very important that people respond timely to these notices and requests, because if you don't submit the responses or the documentation back, that could interrupt or affect your Medicaid coverage. For this, though, I wanted to highlight at the bottom of this section, many individuals and families are excluded from wage checks. So in particular, for this group, I wanted to highlight that children, those receiving long-term care in settings like nursing facilities and ICFs, and those that are on waivers. So any of our home and community-based service waivers are excluded from wage checks. But an example of somebody that might receive a request for, or a wage check request, is an adult that's getting long-term personal care services because they're not on a waiver. But I did want to highlight that section at the bottom, that those are the people that are excluded from this process. So that started in May, the wage checks. We resumed that in May, and then that will continue every quarter as we get information, as we bounce our information against the Workforce Commission's income data.
Can I have a question? I have a question. In regards to the children, is it also, are they also excluded in supported employment if they're in a workforce type employment situation in high schools?
So all children under 18 are excluded. If they're receiving supported employment under the waivers, they would be excluded as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions? You have anything else, Mr. Bennett?
Just I wanted to highlight just a few in the remainder of the report under programs and services. This is just a high level snapshot of a few different services. So in self-direction, you can see the enrollment there. As of beginning of June, there were about 2,600 self-directing their services. And then the bar graph kind of breaks that down across the 4 different waivers that offer self-direction as an option. The Act 421 Children's Medicaid option, or TEFRA. Since that program was stood up in early 2022, LDH has enrolled more than 2,300 children into the program. And the table that's included provides some additional information and stats on applications received, processed, and approved, and those currently enrolled. We have just over 1,900 enrolled right now. And one thing that we're looking at with this program, since it is still relatively new, we're constantly looking at the enrollment trends to kind of see, is the enrollment still growing? Has it leveled off? And we are still seeing growth month to month in this program, but it seems like the growth is kind of slowing. So we're going to keep watching that because that's very important for budgeting as we continue to make sure that we have funding to support this program going forward. But yes, right now we have a little over 1,900 children enrolled under the TEFRA program. Just really quickly, applied behavior analysis, ABA therapy services. There's a table. Those services are delivered under our managed care plans. So the table that's included has some information on the number of prior authorizations that were requested and approved, and then also the cost across each of the plans for the month of May. And then finally, EPSDT support coordination. I included some information on this program. It serves about 800 children and youth. If you're under age 21, you have access to this program, and most of the individuals that are served in this program have a statement of approval with OCDD, but they're not yet on a waiver. So this service kind of mimics the support coordination that many receive under the waiver programs. And that the kids, they get a plan of care. The support coordinator monitors the services that they should be receiving, and then also assists the family with getting access to new services or supports. So I think that concludes my report. And if there are any other questions, I'm happy to try to answer those.
I got a simple question, just because not everybody knows what all of the acronyms are. What is the ROW and what is the NOW? What does that mean?
So those are two of the waivers that we have. The ROW is the residential options waiver, and the NOW is the new opportunities waiver. And both of those are operated by OCDD.
And
along
I'm sorry,
with
what was the NOW again?
The NOW is the new opportunities waiver. It's one of the waivers under OCDD, along with the ROW and Children's Choice. Those are the three that offer self-direction as an option. And then the fourth one is the Community Choices waiver, and that one's operated by OAAS.
So the residential option, that's like cover people with rental assistance and that kind of stuff, or?
No, it provides an array of home and community-based services. I think it was initially called the residential options waiver because it was one of the waivers that primarily, when people were transitioning out of, and Julie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, transitioning out of facilities, that was the primary waiver that they were transitioning to, so they could get back into the community with home and community-based services.
Yes. So not really, Brian. So, most of the people who leave a state-operated facility go into the new opportunities waiver. So the new opportunities, we sort of have tiers, right? Your Children's Choice waiver is for children under the age of 21, and there's an assumption for most kids that with EPSDT that gives you what's medically necessary and what's in the Children's Choice that should meet your needs. We do have some children who need to bump up. So then sort of the next tier in our waiver is the supports waiver. That's for people who really don't need help at home, but they need kind of something to do during the day, whether that's help with employment or help by going to a day program. And so the supports waiver is primarily that, with a little bit of respite just in case you need it. Then the next tier we have is the residential options waiver. And Brian, what you might have been, so the residential options waiver was initially designed for intermediate care facilities. So like your small group homes that were like 6 and 8 bed, to downsize to become like 3 or 4 people living together instead of 6 or 8 in a waiver home instead of in an ICF group home. We didn't have anybody take us up on that. There's lots of different reasons why, and anybody you ask will tell you. But what we did do is take what was in the residential options waiver and kind of make it our next tier. So you can get in-home supports and residential options waiver. You just can't get 24/7 support.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't have skilled nursing like in the new opportunities waiver. You can get skilled nursing. So if you need 24-hour one-on-one supports or skilled nursing, the only place you can get that is in the new opportunities waiver. But there's an array of services in residential options with in-home services, employment services, permanent supportive housing is in there, housing assistance, housing stabilization. So there's still an array of services you can get in the residential options waiver. There's still some caps there, like in our other waivers, where the now is really for those people with the most significant complex needs who need more services. So now we don't really consider it our ICF conversion waiver like it was. It's sort of now just another step in our tiered waiver process.
Okay, so just for clarification, so it's a tier, and then once y'all once they hit a certain point, they get bumped up to another tier, correct?
There is a process that can happen based on the person's needs. Yeah.
Right. So is it possible for a person to receive services from you guys get away from you, and then with a whole nother department get services like that. I'm just asking if that is, like, you can do that, like, I would call it double dipping, but.
So it depends when you say another department.
Like another, let's say it's, HDC or, you know, another government agency. That's what I'm saying, another government agency. Like if a person would give
An
me.
example?
Yeah.
So with OCDD, we have an MOU with them, whereas if an individual needs support employment services to go to work, LRS or under the vocational rehabilitation program pays for the support employment services. But then the supports waiver, then once our funding ends, the supports waiver can be used for the follow along for that job.
Okay, that's.
So, but we do have to have an MOU in place so that you don't have double dipping. And that each government entity knows who's supposed to be paying for what.
Okay, that's what I'm asking, like if people get in and run into those type of situations, how do y'all combat that?
Yeah, because they can get state plan and waiver. So there are different mechanisms, but like she said, we have mechanisms in place to make sure that they're not.
Lauren, and just an example, I get the row. I started off on long-term care, which is from a whole nother agency, but once I got another one, they moved.
Oh, okay.
So technically, like, because I need so much care, if we didn't have that system in place, I might have to go to residential or group home, but because of my husband, we have that in-home support. I don't need 24-hour care, but I need a lot more than just a little. So we can live in our own home and not in a group home. So that's just kind of like a real world example. And then I had a question from Brian. You were mentioning, so long-term care, the wage checks are in place, but for the waiver, the wage checks are not in place.
So we're not, so the individuals that are subject to wage checks, the ones that would not be included in those, would not receive wage check letters, would be anyone, let me pull up the list just to make sure so pregnant women, children, if you're in an active renewal period, so what that means is if you currently have, if Medicaid is currently working on your annual renewal, you won't get one because that work's already being done with your annual renewal. And then anyone that's in a long-term care setting, like a nursing home or ICF, and then anyone that's in one of our home and community-based services waiver programs, our HCBS waivers. So those are the 4 that are operated by OCDD. We just talked about a few of them. Row, Now, Supports and Children's Choice. The 2 that are operated by OAS, which is the Community Choices and Adult Day Healthcare waivers. And then we have 1 that OBH, Office of Behavioral Health, operates, and that's the CSOC waiver.
Okay, because I have, and I'm on the Now waiver. I've gotten wage checks. So that might be something I need to get with you about.
Yes, please. Was it recently?
Last year.
Okay.
Well, it was a few years, so I'll just get your contact. So I won't take time, but yeah, thank you for clarifying. Is there?
I got a question. For Ms.
Julie?
Ms. Julie. Ms. Julie, Ms. Julie.
Mr. Eric, Mr. Eric.
How you doing?
Something private conversation.
No, ain't y'all trying to put the waiver as one waiver at one time, and y'all was trying to work on that?
Yeah.
So what's going on with that process? Because y'all was trying to put it all at once.
Sure. So before COVID, I can only speak to you in years before COVID and during COVID and after COVID, because my brain doesn't calculate.
I know.
But well before COVID, we had what we called a systems transformation group, and that's when we talked about our stakeholders said they wanted us to do 2 main things. One was ending the waiting list. 2 was consolidating our waivers. And we worked for a year and we prioritized ending the waiting list and then worked on how we looked at our registry differently and got to the process that we're in now. And then we have been working on consolidating the waivers, and we still plan to do that, but it is still down the road, and I'll tell you why. One of the things that we're using our Rescue Plan Act dollars for is to work on, and it's an electronic assessment tool that will be an electronic, lead to an electronic plan of care as well. But what we're going to do is we're going to be, hopefully in the next couple of months, start piloting some of the assessments. So for people who are on the waiver, if you're randomly selected to be one of the 3,000 to 4,000 people that we're trying to do this assessment on, during your annual plan of care meeting, we're going to be doing an assessment hand in hand with the support coordinator with people that we'll be paying to go out and work on these assessments. It'll be a different tool than what we've used before. Once we get those 3,000 or 4,000, it'll probably take us about a year and a half to do that. We're going to use the results of that assessment to help us figure out, because once we go to a consolidated waiver, we're going to have an objective way to look at where are people appropriately placed, like what is the right service level for people. So we have to get that information together before we can know, like, what are the appropriate tiers. We think it'll be similar to what we have now, a children's tier, an employment, kind of like that. But we have to do that assessment so we can objectively look at what are those tiers going to be. At the same time, as long as we're using those Rescue Plan Act dollars, which we know we're going to spend until December of 2025, we're under something called a maintenance of effort. And so CMS is really not happy about us changing anything in our waiver until we spend those dollars. So we really, we need that next year and a half to collect that assessment information. We know we can't change it. So once we get past that December 2025 mark, we're really, our plan right now is to then move kind of full court press to starting to get back to those conversations around the consolidated waiver. And we'll have the data we need to really inform within that consolidated waiver how you get folks into the right tier and into the right service model.
So y'all are still planning to do that?
We are absolutely still planning to do it. So a year and a half, 2 years down the road before we really start to dive in on those topics.
Okay, so Ms. Julia.
Yes, sir.
I see that y'all working on where y'all cutting the case managers down to 3, like 3 companies. Y'all got them cut down to 3 companies, and now y'all trying to shed some of these facilities down to certain, like 6 or 7 companies. How y'all gonna handle the capacity of all the people y'all serve? Y'all cut it down to so many companies, which ain't a bad thing, but have y'all put that in place to think about how y'all gonna handle that?
So I'm not sure what you're talking about. So we have support coordination agencies that do our case management, and there's no actions happening right now to reduce that number, or cut that number, or have anybody do things differently. I think there's opportunities for improvement. I think the support coordination agencies will tell you the state has opportunities for improvement. I think we believe there's others, but right now we're not cutting out. I think there's only like 2 or 3 in most regions. Some regions have 2, some have 3. I think one. I think Lake Charles area may only have 1, but so it doesn't give people a lot of opportunities for choice, and there's no plan to cut those out.
I have a concern about the case managers with the overload that they got. That is, a lot of people is falling through the loophole with the many cases that they have, and they're not getting up.
Yeah, so we have a limit that you can't serve more than 35 people. Each case manager can't have more than 35 people because we feel like that's the reasonable amount to be able to give folks what they need. We do have some agencies who will come to us and say, we're having a shortage, we don't have the right number of people, we need to go over, and we will give temporary exceptions to that. If they can't, meet it, we do know that that's an area that, just like we talk a lot about the direct support workforce crisis, there's also a case management workforce crisis. We don't see a lot of people coming in. We've done some brainstorming in our department around how do we help get into maybe schools of social work where you have case managers usually have like a social work background. Can we start to expose them to some of the work that in social work that you might do in the DD field? So I do think I think it's a problem. We know there's recruitment issues. We know they have, issues trying to retain them. We know that there's a lot of turnover. I hear that from families all the time. But we do have limited caseloads and we don't have plans to reduce them. Now, what was happening for a little while is we had a lot of people who were trying to come in, new agencies that were wanting to come in. And we have a lot of training that's required for new agencies to come in. So what we have talked about is when there is a new agency that wants to become a support coordination agency, having them request that maybe like around October or November, so that we can then spend the 3 months that's required doing the training. And what we were having to do is kind of do that all year long with different companies. So we are trying to do some streamlining of when new people, support coordinators come in and when we do that training and how we do it. But we're actually not legally allowed to, at this point with the way it's set up, we're not legally allowed to kick people out or not have them do it unless there's some performance issue or issue of them not doing what they need to for licensing certification.
One more question I have. With the companies, how many clients that they can hold in a company to actually give the service that they need to give out in their area to handle the clients that they have? How many, do y'all have a limitation on that?
So do you mean the 35? So in the OCDD, we say that they can serve one support coordinator can serve 35 people.
Yes, ma'am, but what I'm saying, once the case manager is in it, and you got a list saying, okay, you can pick this company, you can pick this company, you got a chart. Is it a limitation of how many people in that company that they can hold to serve that?
No.
Have y'all ever looked in? They're putting a cap on how many that they
take that back if they don't, if we know that they don't have the capacity. Typically what they do is if they start to get more, then they'll hire another staff person. But I mean, we can definitely take that back and look at it. There's a lot of things that other states are starting to do differently. So I'm not, we are looking at where are there opportunities to make changes. But again, we're still just in the exploratory phases. I think there's things that could happen that would help everybody, but we're having to look at that. And that'll be a change that we would have to get CMS approval for.
So I'm just throwing that out here, what can we do as a board to fix the overload that's coming and say, oh, okay, I'm gonna take this person, I'm gonna work with this person, I'm gonna take this person, and they don't have the capacity to take the people they working with? What can we do?
And are you, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Eric, can we, and you and Julie, can we discuss this at a different time so we can, if that's okay?
That's fine. Yeah, I was just asking.
No, that's not a problem at all, just so we can stay on with our report and everything like that, and we'll get to your question, I promise. All right, Ryan, do you have anything else from your report?
No, that was all.
Okay. Evan?
Brian, I hate to put you on the spot, and this isn't included in your report, but I know that the peer learning collaborative that we're doing, I think the council would be very interested in hearing about that, just because they are, the DSP crisis shows up a lot on their advocacy agenda, and I kind of wanted, can you just speak to what the goals are for that peer learning collaborative that we're participating in?
Yes. So, and that I'll include that on a future report. But the Office of Aging and Adult Services, the Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities, and Medicaid, the three agencies under LDH, we applied for a technical assistance opportunity. I believe it is with the National Council on Aging. I can't recall if that's the sponsoring national agency that's sponsoring it, but we were chosen to participate in this technical assistance opportunity to basically address the direct support professional workforce crisis that most, if not all, states are experiencing. So over the next 6 months or so, the technical assistance opportunity will involve two different things. Number one, we've been assigned a subject matter expert to work with. Her name is Dr. Lisa Mills, and she's going to be working with us to try to develop some career ladder or something similar to that we can look at maybe implementing in the future that would allow growth for a direct support worker, particularly growth in their wages or growth in their pay that would be tied to experience, maybe competencies working with different populations. Just something to incentivize that worker to hopefully retain them in that DSW pool. So that's kind of the first part. And then the second part is we have a peer learning collaborative where I think it's us and 5 other states will be meeting monthly to kind of brainstorm and share ideas on best practices, because all 6 of us, including Louisiana, are kind of working to develop a similar model where we're hoping to develop something that will give a career path for direct support professionals. So it's both the TA that we're getting from Dr. Lisa Mills to help us develop something that will be specifically tailored to Louisiana. And then we're also working with our peer states and that cohort to bounce ideas around and brainstorm and ask other states what they've done that's worked well, because there are a few states that we're working with. I believe Oregon and maybe Michigan that have already done some work in that area. So we're very eager to see what we can learn from them.
All right, thank you, Brian. This report requires no action and will be placed on file. If there is no objection, the meeting will recess for lunch. Done. The meeting is now at recess. It is now 12:03. We will reconvene at 1 o'clock.
And then